So in this series, we're going to be talking about the 7-step sales process. Now, keep in mind, there's lots of different sales processes out there. All of them have good information. You're going to see some variations between them. Some people say it's a 5-step process. Others say there's 6 steps. The one that I've chosen to talk about throughout the course of this lecture is going to be the 7-step sales process. I like it just because I feel like it covers every aspect in the process. It gives good detail. And so what we're going to do is on this episode, I am going to be talking about the first step of the 7-step sales process. So buckle down. This will be fun. There's going to be some really good takeaways. And even if you've been in sales for a long time, I have noticed, even as I was preparing for this lecture, that it's good to have the refresher because a lot of times we forget steps, we jump to conclusions, and this is just a great refresher to be able to go, all right, how am I going to do this? For those of you that are new, this is going to be great information, just as it's going to teach you some of the very basic fundamental things that you need while you're in the restoration industry and as you're out trying to be a more effective salesperson. So let's dive into everything. Before we kind of go into it, I did want to just go over the importance of the sales process. Like I say, a lot of times we have the tendency to jump around or to skip steps. Sometimes that's okay, but starting out, it's really important to know and to follow these steps. So the 7-step sales process, as outlined in business textbooks, it's a good start, especially since 40% of sales teams don't have a playbook. So it's kind of interesting. Most of the clients that we work with, they do not have a playbook. They don't have a target marketing plan. They have nothing to be able to give their sales rep or their business developer to say, hey, here's how you can get started. Here's what we want from you. So it's interesting. It says that actually with a playbook or a sales strategy, you actually have a 33% more likelihood to close your sales at a higher rate. Obviously, if we're in this industry, all of us want to be closing more deals. So let's kind of dive into everything. It's a good start. You will need to customize some of this to fit your particular business needs. So keep in mind, this is just a good foundation for everybody to go through and hopefully take them from the beginning to the end of the sales funnel that you have. All right. So the first step in the sales process is prospecting. Okay. So when we talk about prospecting, we're talking about what it means to start finding clients. And one of the biggest things that I notice with most restoration companies is I ask them the question, do you have a plan? Now, when we talk about having a plan, what are we talking about? Many times, marketers, sales reps, business developers, whatever we want to call them, they're like, oh, I'm going to go out and visit insurance agents. Oh, I'm going to go out and visit plumbers. I guess that's a plan because you're saying who you want to go visit. But there's got to be a whole lot more than just the plan. And especially if you're brand new and have never been in this industry, it's extremely critical to know who your target markets are. What are the different verticals that you want to focus on? Okay. So in the disaster cleanup world, it's very, very important to know who is your target audience. Who are you guys going after? Is it plumbers? Is it insurance agents? Is it property managers? Are you going to be focusing on adjusters? Are you going to be going to different government institutions, city institutions like public works directors? Are you going to be going to the fire departments? This is something that you need to find out. Now, if you're the sales rep who's listening to this episode of selling and the 7-step sales process, if your boss has not sat down and said, hey, here are the different verticals that we want you to focus on, please, 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 go talk to them and say, hey, what is our focus as a company? What do we want to be going after as far as business goes? If you're a business owner listening to this, take the time to sit down and go, what are the different markets that you're going to focus on? Many times people have not taken the time to do this. And I find that people go, well, I'm going to market to every single one of these. And all I can say is if you market to every single one of these, good luck on actually ever building a relationship because it's more of the shotgun approach and rarely does the shotgun approach work. Okay. So find out whatever departments or whatever organizations you're going to be focusing on. It's very important to find out what their buzzwords are. Okay, so an example would be if insurance agents is who you're going to target, an example of a buzzword to them if you're visiting them is insurance agents want to reduce claims and they want to reduce the total amount of payout that comes from their office. Many insurance agents, just so you guys know, their bonus at the end of the year is tied to how much money their office pays out in claims. So that would be a buzzword, right? So if you're able to reduce claims and to reduce the payout, that insurance agent might be more willing to talk to you. If you're going after plumbers, we all know the buzzword with plumbers is spiff, right? How much money are you going to pay me if I send you a job? So if you're new to this industry and you have never marketed plumbers and you're out there telling them, hey, I'll bring you donuts, they're probably going to laugh at you and go, hey, that's great. But the guy down the street is offering me $500 for every job I send them, or $1,000, right? So take the time to figure out who you're going to market and make sure that you have a plan in place for those different markets that you're going to tackle. All right. Now I have to talk about this because salespeople were infamous for dealing with this issue. Avoid the 3 Ps. What are the 3 Ps? Procrastination. Salespeople are notorious for procrastinating. What I mean by that is especially when it comes to starting your day. You wake up, you start the day at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. You spend 1 or 2 hours going through emails. You kind of look at your CRM and see who's in the database. And you go, hey, I'm going to go out and I'm going to start pounding the streets at 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock comes and you go, you know what? The weather's kind of bad. Maybe I'll have a cup of coffee. You have the cup of coffee. You go back to your computer. You start looking at it. You look at more jobs. You look at the CRM. 11 o'clock is now here. And you're like, well, I don't want to go out at 11 o'clock because, well, it's going to be a lunch in an hour. So nobody's going to be in their office. Avoid procrastination. It is one of the biggest challenges that salespeople run up against. The other P is perfectionism. I deal with some of my clients and they are so intent on creating their sales plan that they spend hours and hours and hours and hours going through this sales plan. And unfortunately, they're not out actually executing that sales plan. Understand perfectionism is never going to be achieved when it comes to sales. Every client you talk to is going to be a little bit different. They're all going to want something different. So it is good to have something and it is good to have a plan, but just understand it's never going to be perfect. So just do what you can to plan as best as you can, but after that, it's important to get out. And the last one is paralysis. Once you've done everything you need to, once you've prepared, once you've done all the other stuff and you're ready to go out the door, when it comes time to actually opening the door and going and getting in your car saying, I'm going to go make visits, all of a sudden you freeze up and you're like, I can't make a visit. I don't know what I'm going to say. Well, I don't feel comfortable. I'm nervous. This is normal, right? This happens to everybody. I tell all of my sales reps, the first 1 or 2 visits are the hardest ones of the entire day because you got to break off the ice and the cobwebs that you have. And typically you have to do that every single day. But after that first or second visit, you start to get into the groove, you start to feel better, you start to loosen up, and you start carrying on a conversation that is hopefully somewhat coherent with your prospective clients. So avoid the 3 Ps, procrastination, perfectionism, and paralysis. Okay, so as you guys are looking at your different markets that you want to visit, it's really important to create a list for each of these markets, okay? Rather than just going out and saying, hey, I'm going to hit every insurance agent that's in this zip code. Before you do that, go through, make a spreadsheet and find all the insurance agents that fit within one zip code. Then find all the agents that are in another zip code. And with the technology we have nowadays, one of the simplest ways that you can do that is all you need to do is go to Google. If you live in Chicago, type in State Farm Agents Chicago. And when you do that, Google's going to pull up a list of all the agents that are in Chicago, and it will probably pull up agents in those surrounding areas. Make a list, check and see what their zip code is, see what their address is, and go through and try to categorize those agents based upon location. If you're marketing more than just agents, let's say you're doing plumbers and agents, Go through and type in plumber, find all the plumbing companies, get their zip code, and combine your agents and your plumbers so that they're all into the same zip code. So if you're choosing to market both of them that day, you know who is in certain areas, so you're not wasting all your time driving around trying to find people. Okay. Now, some of you will be taking over an old book of business. So somebody either retired, they got fired, or they quit. And so you're going to be given that book of business. Go through that book of business and find out of those clients, who were your top referrers, who brought in the most jobs, that type of thing. And if you do that, then you can create a list so that you're hitting the best of the best first, and then go through and make your list based upon those that would be high, medium, low. Okay. But it's very important. Make sure you have your lists made. It's going to help you feel more comfortable, and it's going to allow you to work more efficiently. Okay. Now it comes down to creating routes. Okay. Be strategic when you create your routes. Now, I do have a lot of people go, Nate, do I need routes? Do I not need routes? I think it's important to, for lack of better words, you do need a route. Now, when I say a route, that may change. You may not do the same route every time because it's based upon which client you have to visit. So what I'm going to say is good to have each of your different marketing verticals, to have them categorized in those zip codes and those addresses. And then that morning, when you go through and create your list, you at least know who is in those certain areas. You may not hit all of them, but you can go through and create your list based upon that. So it is very important to use the list in order to be able to create your route. Okay. Now, I did have one sales rep that used to work for me, and bless his heart, he told me, he's like, Nate, I would create my route in the morning, but I only got through 50% of my visits. And I would ask him and go, well, why'd you only get to 50% of them? And he says, well, every time I was driving, I saw another insurance office that I didn't have on my list. So I'd stop by and I'd say hello. Now, sometimes I'm okay with that, but many times it creates bad habits because you're not working efficiently. And if you're not getting to the people that you planned for, then that means you're getting distracted from those that you really should be targeting. So if you get caught in that scenario where you see offices that are not on your list that you're unaware of, write down the name, write down the address so that next time when you're out in that area, you can add them to the list. But I do believe it is better to follow your list than not, because your list, you should be visiting. If you followed my other videos, each one of those people you put down, you should be creating the purpose of why you're visiting them and what you want to get out of that visit. Whereas if you're just dropping by somebody that you've never met, you have no purpose, you have no idea anything about them, you're just dropping by. All right, so let's get into the next part, which is knowing your client. Now, people tell me, well, if I'm out prospecting and I've never met this person, how am I going to know my client? Well, the answer to that is social media has made it very, very easy for all of us. So one thing I advise everybody is, before you go make these visits, and in one of my trainings, we're going to talk about how to make the best use of your time. But assuming that the morning time is when you're creating your routes and who you're going to visit, take the time to get on LinkedIn, get on Facebook, Google some of these people, and find out just a little bit about them. If you go to Facebook and they have posts all about their softball tournament or about their trip to Hawaii, whatever it is, that is going to give you something that when you get into that office, hopefully you're going to be able to talk about some of those things of, oh, hey, I want to swing by, introduce myself. I understand that you're really big into softball. Tell me a little bit more about that. Trust me, when they know that you know stuff about them, that lets them open up and be more receptive to the things that you're talking about. Okay. So as it says here, it's much easier to start a cold conversation when you have a talking point from the beginning of your initial contact. So the example I gave was, hey, I was on your Facebook page last night, and I think it's awesome that you guys support the local children's charity organization. If you bring that up and they have a charity organization, I guarantee you they are going to start to talk to you about that organization, right? It's going to break the ice. It's going to help you to become more relaxed, and it's going to help them be more relaxed because now they're talking about something that they're passionate about. So get to know your client before you go visit them. If they're not on Facebook, they're not on LinkedIn, maybe you're not going to know anything about them. You just got to go visit. But most of these people, you can at least find out a little bit about them so that you've got a talking point when you go into the office. All right. So getting out the door, that can be really tough for a lot of people. And I already talked about this briefly. But I would say that for most people, and I know for myself included, when I used to be doing this, it would take me 2 to 3 visits legitimately before I really started to get comfortable, before I started to feel good about myself, and I knew that the conversations were going to flow the way they needed to. Okay. So keep in mind that sales is a number game. Sitting in the office is not going to generate revenue. A lot of salespeople spend more time in the office than they do out in the field. And really, it should be just the opposite. You should be spending more time out in the field and less time in the office. Now, when I do say make sure you're getting out the door, be very aware and sensitive to your client's needs. So if you're saying, hey, insurance agents is who I want to visit, we know that most insurance offices open up at 9 o'clock in the morning. Do not show up at 9 a.m. They've got to listen to all their voicemails from the night before. They got to check all their emails. They got to get all of that administrative stuff done. So in that case, I'd say probably no sooner than 10 a.m. so that they can get things under control. If you know that the insurance office closes at 5 p.m., don't show up at 4:45. It's rude. They're trying to close everything out for the day. They're going to be rushed. They've got a lot of things going on. So make sure you know the hours of who it is that you're going to market to, and choose times when you know that when they're going to be more willing to listen to what you have to say. All right, this is a big one. And owners love it when I talk about this because they want all their salespeople to be tracking activities. And the salespeople don't like it when I talk about this because if they're not tracking activities, then it kind of puts them on the spot. But I will just tell you, whether you are the sales rep or the owner, the importance and the value of tracking activities is huge for both of you. For an owner, number one, it makes him or lets him or her know that you're out working, that you're doing what they're paying you to do. So do it for that reason alone. Number two, for yourself, it's going to allow you to create strategies. It's going to let you know your numbers to know where jobs are coming from. It's going to let you know the efficiency of your visits. It's going to let you know what your close rate is. Tracking your activities is a huge part of being successful. If you talk to the most successful people out there that are salespeople, I guarantee they are keeping track of their leads, they're keeping track of their visits, they're keeping track of their conversations because they know how important that is to working more efficiently. At the end of the week, review your numbers. Whether it's 10 minutes, whether it's 5 minutes, go through it, see what's working, what's not working, see what accomplishments you had, if there's any major milestones, or if there's any major hiccups. It's going to help you for the next week to know what you should or shouldn't be doing. All right. So in summary, if you want to be good at prospecting, make sure you have a plan. Avoid the 3 Ps. Make contact lists for each of your markets, and then create routes based upon those lists. Make sure you're doing homework on your clients. Find out as much as you can about them so that you've got a warm conversation when you walk through that door. Get out the door. Don't stay at home. Don't stay at the office. Get out the door and start being active. And then last but not least, make sure you track your activities so that you have something to gauge your success or maybe not your success to see where you could improve.